Hi, I'm Phil Malto, and welcome to Snowmobiler Television. In fact, welcome to our last episode for this season. It's been a bit of a rough year trying to find snow, but we're ending it off in big snow style here in British Columbia. We are joining in for an 8-day multi-town ride on the Gold Rush Snowmobile Trail. Let's ride.
STV is sponsored by Yamaha, revs your heart. Kimpex, fueled by fun. And by Skidoo, never stop pushing.
The winter snowfalls have been less than ideal in Ontario, and as our plane made its descent into Kamloops, British Columbia, I stared out the window, trying to predict the snow conditions on the ground. In eastern Canada, we always hear about the abundance of snow in BC, and I have ridden here many times, but this trip was different. On this trip, I wasn't going to drive up to the bottom of a mountain and ride in the powder. This time, I was taking part in a multi-day, town-to-town ride. This ride was in celebration of 50 years of snowmobiling in British Columbia, and several communities and clubs were joining together to create this event and tackle the challenges of this rarely used route. Unlike in the East, joining mountain towns with trails is a massive undertaking, an adventure that I was going to be a part of, much like the early gold prospectors who walked this Gold Rush Trail in search of riches. As our group began to unload sleds for this 9-day ride, I was meeting these people for the first time, people who I would spend the entire next 10 days with. This was a very lively and very fun bunch of snowmobilers. They were dedicated sledders who would give me insight into the great adventures, but also the many challenges that BC snowmobilers have overcome and continue to face today and in the years to come.
The 50th came about at last year's spring AGM. We were all sitting around talking with various clubs and stuff, and then the Kamloops Club came up with the idea of having a ride. They do it every year, semi-annually, from Kamloops to Wells, Barkerville and back. So the more we talked about it, the more we liked it, and we had another couple meetings, and everybody agreed, and we just went at her. We started I think in March last year it started, had our first meetings in June, July, and we've been working hard at her since.
Well, with BC, membership is not mandatory, which puts us at a decidedly disadvantage compared to, say, Quebec and Ontario, where if you're going to ride a trail, you have to have a membership. We know there's about 45,000 sledders within BC. We represent about 16%. So the funding is nearly not what it should be in terms of infrastructure to promote infrastructure, to create more infrastructure within BC. But it's something we're pushing hard with. We work closely with government on a number of things. You know, we apply for a number of grants, either provincial or federal, to help us with our grooming programs and helping us with our clubs. So that's basically where we sit right now. We're 72 clubs strong. And you know, it's a really tight-knit community, but increasing our membership is definitely what we need to promote to help build the sport a little bit more in BC. We don't have the funding available at the provincial level to offer to the clubs, so it's up to the clubs to, under their own volunteer effort, to go work with local government officials to get any type of funding they can to put up signage and work with keeping the trail system going. Our biggest challenge when I took over was we had some significant financial problems. We needed to streamline what we were doing a little bit better, which we achieved. We also had 2 provincial associations at one time. There'd been a split about 8 years previous, and there was a challenge there to bring all the clubs together. So we worked together with, you know, I won't take all the credit with it. By no means, that was not me. We had a great team on both sides, and we worked really hard to get it together. So now we're all under one umbrella, all 72 clubs working together. And this ride is a good culmination of that, because it's the clubs right across the board that are involved in it. And there's no way this ride would have been able to happen if we wouldn't have had the support and cooperation of everybody working together. There had been previous provincial rides. There was rides called Rendezvous. I think the last one was back in 1997. So the fact that we can pull off a ride like this, you know, starting from Kamloops and up to Wells, Barkerville and back, is a great culmination of the effort of a lot of clubs, a lot of people, a lot of volunteer time. And again, it would not have happened if we weren't able to put both associations together to make it happen.
I was so stoked to come on this ride. I come from Pembroke, Ontario, and being able to ride a trail system that would take you from community to community. Being 47 now, I wanted to have that opportunity here. It's definitely been an eye-opener to the struggles, but it's been an eye-opening to the communities, the generosity of those clubs within those communities. And you can see how the money we dropped in every community would be big for them. So we need to develop this within British Columbia. I know government really wants to see inter-community trails developed within British Columbia, much like we see in Ontario and Quebec. My vice president role right now, I've kind of been sitting back wondering what is the next step when I become president. Clearly, we need to have government's eyes open to how difficult it is for tourism and to raise tourism dollars for these little communities, getting people to and from the trail system and into their restaurants and into their hotels, as we've all experienced, changing carbides and skis in the nighttime just to travel on those roads. So if we're going to develop that as a tourism industry in this province, we need to get the government's eyes open to how to the struggles we've gone through in this past week. Yeah, I mean, we've got a guy riding here who's from Sudbury. Came here to do this ride with his son. I mean, that's what snowmobiling does. For me, it's all about family, communities, and sticking up for each other. In the snowmobiling world, that's what they do. They stick up for each other. The tragedy in McBride, you know, I know the young man did an interview for Global TV, Rodney Welton, and my heart just grieved for that man, and trying to deal with all the media and families and visitors, and at the same time realize that, you know, I know tragedies happen. A lot of people say, well, why do you continue to do what you do? Well, a lot of it is the camaraderie, the friendships that we've built out on the hill, out on the trail, around a campfire, eating a hot dog. That's a big part of it. It's not just about riding a snowmobile, it's about all the other stuff and the laughs that happen with it. I would just like to say that going forward, what we've seen here is proven to us as the BCSF that this is something that is doable in the province of British Columbia. The mountains have certainly drawn tourists into our communities. That's a drawing card that's there. We want to see other people come that don't necessarily want to ride the mountains. They want to come and they want to do this intercity, intercommunity thing and ride a trail system. That has to be developed for British Columbia so that we can see businesses thrive, small family businesses like we've seen today. The other thing I'd like to say is just an outpouring of thanks to every club along the way that has put so much into making this a great ride for us. We've made friends all along the way. Everybody's you know, happy and high-fiving and having laughs back at the restaurants at night, and it's been just fantastic for me.
Throughout this 8-day adventure, we've seen a lot of different riding conditions, from some pretty bare, some pretty tough looking trails to some absolutely phenomenal powder riding. Every once in a while, I get to put down the camera gear and go for a ride like I got to do today on the HCR 800. I'm not in this.
You're naked.
The ride has been awesome. Yesterday we had an epic sunny day all day. It was excellent. Got beautiful pictures. Yeah, and town to town and all these neat little rustic places that we've stayed at and bars and all that stuff. It's been a great, great time. Certain conditions that we've had during this trip, you would want a different sled, obviously. Today we were on Yanks and of course you want a mountain sled to play in the snow. So yeah, no, it's really good to be able to try all the sleds, and you know, wide ski stance, narrow ski stance, long track, short track, you know, a wider front end's better in the bumps. Yeah, you get to try all that stuff. Obviously, this long of a ride, you get to figure out what things can go wrong on a long trip like this, and try and make it better so that you can tell people what could go wrong if they do decide to do a trip like this. Well, at least then I can distinguish with what type of riding they're going to do, and then figure out what sled I should be pointing them towards.
They're coming to a place with 154 years of history on 154 horses of power. Welcome to Barkerville.
So Barkerville is a gold rush town that sprang up in the mid-1800s, 1862, around a major gold strike from Billy Barker, who came from England. 4,600 people at its peak, and after the 1800s gold rush, the population died down a little bit until another gold rush came in the 30s in nearby wells, and then there was a bit more action in placer mining again. And in 1958, the province declared it a National Historic Site of Canada. Yes, yeah, there's a few replica buildings on site, but most of the buildings are original buildings.
The handoff from one club to another. What's it like as we've handed off the ride to other clubs and they've been the host club?
It actually has been going really smoothly. Like, the clubs have all been coordinating together where each other are going to meet. We did it something similar when the Merit Club did it years ago. So it really, as a rider in the back of the pack or part of the pack, you really never notice the transition from one leader to the other. It was actually quite smooth.
Yeah, because this trail is unique in being that it's an interconnect trail. For us, it takes a lot of coordination. Our trails are a little more rustic, so we had to arrange with all 7 snowmobile clubs along the route to make sure that we had guides for each leg of the route. And the BCSF was part of that organization, but this ride was basically organized by those clubs, where we were just the organizer to make it happen. But without those clubs, we could have never made this ride. Yeah, so day one, the ride went from Kamloops to the Green Lake Snowmobile Club clubhouse. Day 2, we went from the Green Lake Snowmobile Club to the 108 Resort. So that was just north of 100 Mile. Day 3, we went from the 108 resort to Likely, BC. And day 4, we went from Likely, BC up to Wells Barkerville. And the reason that those destinations were chosen, we were only able to do so many kilometers in a day, so we tried to break the ride up so that it was a comfortable distance. I know in Ontario and Quebec they do 300 plus kilometers in an afternoon. To do 150 kilometers in BC is a full 8-hour day, so we had to really break it up. In BC, we're not able to cross roads the way you are in other provinces, and we're not allowed to travel down roads without special permitting. So this ride was usually you go to your local RCMP station and you pull a permit for an area you're riding in. You have to do that in person with your driver's license. Because we were accessing the whole trail on snowmobiles, we weren't able to use that permitting system. So we actually had to pull a special events permit and able to allow us to cross roads, to access up logging roads and things that we had to do on this trail. The Gold Rush Snowmobile Trail is in legislation and sections for some of these crossings, but it was a lot of permits to be able to do this ride. The groomer always returns to the same place because they go up the hill, they get to the emergency shelter, and they come back down, and that is the only trail. So when you compare kilometers of trail with other provinces, we have a very few kilometers of trail because we just access alpine above the trees and then ride above the trees, and there's no trail. So our trails are very short. We just go up to the chalet and then back down. Yeah, the chalets are actually emergency shelters. So there's always wood stoves, food, emergency supplies, first aid, all those things in those shelters, because if you ever get stranded on the hill, you know that you can always go back to that emergency shelter and be safe and warm for the night.
Anybody coming out, even if it's not really severe avalanche terrain or big terrain, they should seriously consider taking avalanche skills training level 1, bare minimum. Anybody that's had it should consider taking a refresher course, like a companion rescue course every couple of years. Keeps people fresh. Things change regularly. Even in the few years that I've been in the avalanche industry, it is amazing the changes that take place because of new technology, etc. And especially have a beacon, probe, and shovel with you all the time in a backpack, not on your snowmobile.
Yeah, and from the BC Snowmobile Federation, we've been working really hard with Avalanche Canada to educate snowmobilers. Snowmobilers have taken more avalanche courses than any other user group. It's still on the rise while other user groups are still going down. Everybody on this ride showed up with the right gear, the right training. We see less and less people in the backcountry that don't have the equipment or know how to use it. I would say that it's the norm now that people have that. If you talk to anyone in the world, BC's on their bucket list of places they want to ride. BC has a huge untapped potential for tourism. Our inability to connect towns changed our tourism focus a little bit, but it is a $867 million industry in BC, and some of these smaller towns are working to get themselves on the map. We're here in Wells Barkerville. Snowmobile tourism is their primary tourism in the winter. If you head down to Valemount, Sicamous, Revelstoke, Golden, those towns exist in the winter because of snowmobiling.
With the trip winding down, it was interesting to see the towns and points of interest on the return trip, places that were unknown to me just 1 week earlier. As the trip concluded and we loaded the sleds on the trailers, I had gained an insight into the challenges of this powder province and also made many new friendships that I know will carry on for many years and for many more adventures.
Hey, look, still recording. Yeah, it's still recording. Thank you. You're welcome. Go team. Still recording.
All winter long, we've been talking to Jeremy about the different aspects of snowmobile maintenance, but Jeremy, you've been in snowmobiling a long time. Let's take a bit and just tell our viewers about you and your history in the sport.
Well, I've been involved in the sport since the age of 6 years old. My father's heavily involved in the snowmobile industry, and he's brought me along. That part of me is ingrained in my blood. And I progressed basically working at dealerships through high school, and became a business owner at one point, and was involved in the snowmobile industry, and have moved on. And now as a rep with Kimpex, I take care of an area throughout Northern Ontario.
You've been a trail rider, you've ridden in the mountains, you've even been on the racetrack.
I have, and that's definitely been a highlight of my life is being involved in the sport in many different aspects.
So when it comes to talking about snowmobile repairs and maintenance and parts, you've been there, done that, so you know what you're talking about.
Well, I'd like to think I am.
You've broken that.
You've got it.
You know, at the end of the winter, nobody likes to call it a season, you know, but you've had your fun on the trails, you spent the time with the friends and family out on the snow, you've been on the lake, but there comes a time when you have to say it's time to put it away. So what do we do?
Well, there's a whole process involved in getting finished up for the end of the season so that you start next season off on the right foot. And a big part of that is, you know, making sure you bring your snowmobile in, you give it a thorough cleaning. Kimpex offers a full line of products for cleaning your sled, and then you got to lubricate it. You got to go through and you got to grease the bearings and make sure everything's, you know, been looked after and that sort of stuff. It's a great time to also have a look at anything that needs to be done throughout the summer to get you ready so that when the fall rolls around, you're ready to ride.
You're right, because we get out there and we ride, but there's, you know, little scuffs here and there. There's a little rust residue. There's some salt that gets on there. Nobody wants to see the salt. So it's a good time to clean that all off, cover it with a good lubricant. And also we got to talk about fuel stabilizers, keeping that fuel clean during the summer.
You got it. So part of that process is making sure that your fuel system is, you know, doesn't have any water from snow residue from the season and that sort of stuff. So choosing a good stabilizer is important.
And we got to protect it from the sun during the summer as well.
Correct, and by choosing a good quality cover, whether you're storing it inside or outside, you still do get a certain amount of light and those type of things, and you want to make sure that your baby's taken care of.
And like you say, during the summer, you put it away, but you know, during the summer, maybe that's a good time to do that retrofit, if you will. Maybe you take a look at your suspension, the bearings, and you know, in the suspension, and maybe that's the time to get ready for next season. And where do we find all that stuff during the summer?
Well, you go online or you go to your local Kimpex dealer.
And get ready for the next season.
STV is sponsored by Ultimax Belts, performance proven, performance driven. Triton Trailers, the difference is in the details. And by CKX, wear your passion.
I've been left alone near Kamloops. Geez, all I've got is a granola bar. I got an old Henry, which I could probably make into a weapon and take down a grizzly if I had to. The trees around here are pretty green. I don't know if I'll be able to build a fire or a lean-to tonight, so looks pretty dismal from this point on. Oh, wait a minute, I got M&Ms. This is the best day ever.